I remember laying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I would ever get to be called Mom. And I don't think people talk about that part enough. That quiet moment when the house is still and it's just you and your thoughts. And the question you don't want to say out loud. What if it never happens for me? Hi, my name is Felicia Tanai, and this is our silent journey. This is something I never thought I would be sharing. Fertility treatments, the emotional roller coaster that comes with it. It wasn't something I knew much about until I had to live it. Since I was young, I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I had so many nieces and nephews around me, constantly giving me the worst baby fever. I just knew, one day, that would be me. I met my husband in June of 2014. At the time, he was helping his dad coach a football team that my brother played on. And from day one, we were inseparable. I was always at his house, or he was at mine. 5 months into dating, we decided to move in together. And it didn't look how I imagined. We were living in his family home, with his siblings and his mom. But it worked for us. A few years later, we got our own apartment. And that's when the conversation started. Marriage, a future, and eventually, starting a family. We talked about everything. We wanted one boy, one girl. We even picked out names we loved. And that's when our journey started. We were 23 and 24, young, a little reckless. Looking back, maybe we weren't fully ready, but we were hopeful. A year went by. Nothing. And at first, it didn't feel scary. It just felt like, okay, maybe next month. Then my cousin got pregnant. And I was happy for her. I really was. But I was hurting at the same time. And that's a really confusing place to be. To love someone. To be genuinely happy for them. And still go home and cry. Another year passed. And still nothing for us. My period was so regular, I could predict it down to the night. I'd go to sleep already knowing. And I don't think people understand how heavy that becomes. When your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Except the one thing you need it to. Year 3 hit. And that's when things started to change. I found myself crying at night, quietly, so my husband wouldn't hear me. Because I didn't even know how to explain what I was feeling anymore. There was one night I remember so clearly. I was laying there, and I just turned the other way, so he wouldn't see me crying. And I kept thinking, why is this so easy for everyone else? but not for me. And that thought didn't just come once. It stayed. It followed me during the day, in conversations, in silence, in moments that we were supposed to be happy. And I didn't say this out loud at the time, but I started to wonder if maybe it was me. Like maybe my body was the reason this wasn't happening. Like maybe I was the problem. And that's a really hard place to sit in. Because once that thought enters your mind, it doesn't leave easily. The pressure started to build. And it didn't just sit inside me, it started affecting us. We argued more. And it wasn't always about fertility. It was little things that turned into bigger things. Because underneath it all, we were both hurting. And I think in some ways, we were grieving something we didn't even have yet. By year 5 of dating, I thought I would have a wedding and a baby. Or at least be close. But nothing was happening. Nothing was changing. I remember wondering, when is it going to be our turn? And silently, I started asking myself, is it ever going to happen for us? Because no one prepares you for that feeling of not knowing if your life is going to look the way you always imagined it would. And then there was something else. Google. I don't think I'd admit it out loud at first, but I remember laying there one night, typing in things like, how long does it take to get pregnant? When should you be worried? Why am I not getting pregnant? And honestly, I wish I hadn't. Because suddenly, I had all these possibilities, all these things that could be wrong, and no answers. And that made everything feel heavier. Then the questions started. I remember one time standing there while someone asked me, so, when are you guys going to have one of your own? And I froze. Because in that moment, you have two choices. Tell the truth, or protect yourself. And I chose to protect myself. I smiled, like I always did, and said, we're trying. But the second I got in the car, I just lost it. Because what people don't understand is that one question can ruin your entire day. Then came the comments. You're not getting any younger. And it's like, thank you. As if I'm not already thinking that every single day. As if I'm not already laying in bed at night, feeling like time is slipping through my hands. Because in my head, there was this clock ticking, getting louder and louder, telling me I was running out of time. And then came the nights that felt different. The nights where I wasn't just sad. I was angry. There were nights I would lay there and question God. And I struggled with even admitting that. Because I felt like I wasn't supposed to feel that way. But I did. I was angry, asking him what I did wrong, asking why I wasn't worthy of being a mom, why I wasn't worthy of bringing life into this world. And then I would feel guilty for even thinking that. It was this constant back and forth between anger and guilt. And then I'd hear stories about babies being neglected or hurt, and it would break me all over again. Because I couldn't understand how people who didn't want it could have it so easily, and I couldn't. That part of my journey was one of the hardest. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, I felt lost. And I think what made it even harder was feeling like nobody talked about this. Like I was the only one going through it. Even though I know now I wasn't. And then there were the moments that were confusing in a different way. When someone you loved gets that positive test, you're happy for them. You truly are. But it's also heartbreaking because you want that moment so badly for yourself. I remember staring at a positive test once, my hands shaking, rereading it over and over, just to make sure it was real. And for a moment, everything felt okay. I felt this rush of relief, like, finally, it's happening for us. And then, a week later, it was gone. That was my first chemical pregnancy. And that was the moment I realized something might not be right. But even then, I didn't rush to get help. I went back and forth in my head. What if I'm overreacting? What if it just takes time? What if I go and they tell me something I don't want to hear? Because there's a certain fear in finally asking the question and getting an answer. After about 3 years of trying, I finally told my husband, I think something's wrong. I don't think I can get pregnant. And even saying that out loud felt heavy. I made an appointment with my OB, and I remember even that feeling like a big step. Like once I walked into that office, things were going to become real. And after talking through everything, I was referred to a fertility clinic here in Arizona. And just like that, a whole new chapter of my life began. I decided to name this podcast Our Silent Journey because so many people go through things like this in silence. Or at least, that's how it felt for me. No one really talks about the ugly parts, the breakdowns, the anger, the jealousy, the doubt. So I want to share all of it. The highs, the lows, the ugly cries, and eventually, our miracle baby. And before I end this episode, I want to talk to you directly. If you're listening to this right now, and you're at the beginning of your journey, where every month still feels hopeful, I see you. If you're in the middle of it, where hope and heartbreak feel like a cycle you can't escape, I feel you. And if you're at that point where you're scared to even ask for help because you don't know what the answer might be, I understand you. You are not alone in this. And I know it feels like it sometimes, but you're not. And if I could go back and talk to the version of me who was laying in bed, crying, feeling like her body was failing her, I would tell her, you are not broken. This isn't your fault. And your story isn't over yet. And if sharing this helps even one person feel less alone, then every part of this journey is worth telling. Next week, I'm going to talk you through my very first fertility appointment. All the emotions and everything that came with it. If you have a story you want to share, whether it's anonymous or not, please reach out to me. I want this to be a safe space for every silent battle. Thank you for being here and for listening. I'll talk to you next week.